All right, well, hello and welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you haven't. We're back to another video. It seems to me that the most watched videos that I have on my channel have to do with talking about artists and books. And that's cool. I've said before I don't mind being the book guy, because that's probably where I got a lot of my self-training. So anything that I picked up on my own over the years, starting out as just, a young artist who was inspired by popular culture, inspired by animation, inspired by comic book art, fantasy art. It was more difficult to find information about how to be an artist or how to learn things like anatomy, figure drawing. It was hard to find training in those areas. It was hard to find artists who had experience with those types of things. So most of what I was getting, most of what I was finding, I'd have to go to a library and find a book, and information was not really accessible to the degree that it is today, where you can watch a YouTube video, you can go onto Google and search the internet and find information from all around the world. A lot of what I got was from books. I still enjoy having books when it comes to learning new things or looking at information. I like looking through a book a lot more than I like looking on a screen. So we're going to do a little refresher on the previous video that I had, which was books for artists to learn anatomy. There's a few new books on here, which again, I will link to below. And if you click on those links, they are affiliate links, which helps give a little bit to the channel to help make free videos like this possible. It helps me out a lot. And I think in turn, it helps you out because it's easy to click the link, follow it, and get a book that you're interested in. All right, let's head over to the drawing table behind me and let's get started looking at some books. This one, Stonehouses Anatomy, is available through Superani Publishing, which is an artist group that has been around for a long time, and they have published many really awesome books. So basically, this is the artist's Bible for drawing anatomy. It's full of information. It's got a really cool layout. The way that they are presenting the information is kind of like in an interesting and fun way. So we have 2 chapters on the basics of the body, and we have, they break down the bones, and then they get into the muscles. And when we're talking about anatomy, I think it's easy to get sort of buried in the medical part of it, of anatomy. So as though we were doctors studying anatomy, and that's one thing that I never really got super into. I wasn't like highly academic in school. I was not really into taking pre-med classes to learn the structure of the human form. I mean, it is interesting enough, but it was not really what I was after. I guess what I was looking for is just, well, how can I take this information and use it as an artist? So the really heavy anatomy stuff I was not super into. This book isn't just like that. It's not just a medical journal. There are areas like this where they kind of simplify the structure. In this case, the structure of an ear. And again, they carry on with this very consistent way of having these fun illustrations and cartoons where these characters are having a talk about anatomy. And there's a lot of interesting points in this. So they go through the features of the face, the skull, the muscular system. Again, I really love how they break things like this down, where you've got these like really fun illustrations and these short little captions. This to me is kind of like, okay, you want to draw the skull from the side. Or some of the other stuff, some of the more technical information, I don't know if you really need that, especially when you're starting out. Things like this where they're naming all of these muscles that are in the face. I mean, there's a ton of stuff to learn, and the human form is extremely complex. It's probably the most complex machine that we know about. So this book, I can say that it's got its good points, and it's got its points where I'm kind of like, I feel like some people might just get kind of buried with the information. It seems a little bit too much. And I guess, I think in some form they call this a Bible. And a Bible, I don't know how many people would read a Bible from start to finish in chronological order or in the order of the pages and chapters. You sort of go through and you take pieces of it. So I feel like this book should be used in that way, where you're going through and you're taking pieces of the information, and you're not so much going to start at the beginning and go through to the end. And again, to be fair, while I've gone through and skimmed it and tagged areas that I'm thinking, yeah, that's something that I would want to reference at some point while drawing, it's heavy. It's a heavy book. It's a lot. It's fun, but it is pretty high up there in terms of, I guess in terms of, I don't know if it would be studying level, right? Like, this is not a book that I would say, grab this book if you're just starting out and it has everything that you need. I would say this is more of an intermediate to professional level. So yeah, it's decent. It's cool. And it's definitely new. This is a book that I've added to my list that I did not previously have when I went through book reviews in the past. So some cool stuff in here. I definitely like things like this, where they're really getting into the individual bones and then kind of building a figure, talking about different poses and the movement, the muscles. You put the muscles on the bones, and then you put the flesh on the, great. It's great stuff. Really good. All right. So an anatomy for all artists. Okay. This next book, Figure Drawing, Design, and Invention by Michael Hampton. This, to me, is the best all-around book. If I was going to recommend one book that has a really nice balance of, anatomy, like heavy anatomy and gesture, and this is really geared toward an artist. I have a ton of these pages bookmarked, and this is a book, actually, that I feel like I would work through and take these individual things and reproduce these drawings, creating these drawings and kind of getting an understanding of what they're talking about here in terms of the proportions and the gesture and the movement, and how you can simplify, for instance, on this page, the rib cage and pelvis. This book is great. I can't recommend this one enough. I would definitely say anyone that is looking to either get started, or you're already at an intermediate or advanced level and you want to further your understanding of anatomy, geared toward an artist who needs to take this information and get right to it in terms of utilizing it to draw. This is really great. There's awesome sections in here, even on the features of the face. So sometimes a book will kind of, it'll have its really in-depth strong points, and then it'll skim over some other stuff. This is awesome because it hits on all of those points, even different builds and how those muscles are. And I love the way they have it color coded, where you can learn that stuff, that in-depth anatomy, the terminology, and the individual muscles, the major and minor muscles, really breaking down like an area, like you're struggling with understanding how the neck works. The neck is more complex than maybe most people would think. There's a whole section on this. How do I simplify that? How do I create the volume, and what happens to it as it moves? So again, the Michael Hampton book, one more time, Maybe I should have ended with this one. I don't know. But this is the one that I would say, if you're going to have one book, get this one. And obviously, there are people that are going to have varying opinions on this. So if you have anything, questions about this particular book, or you're thinking, hey, you missed one, what about this book? If I don't have it, I'll definitely pick it up. And that's part of this whole idea of me creating these videos too, is so that I can learn things from the people that are viewing them, as well as providing some value for people out there. I mean, there's even a section here on drapery. Figure Drawing, Design and Invention by Michael Hampton. Check the link below. Definitely, you need a copy of that. You need a copy of that. 2 books from ImagineFx, which is the outstanding publication for fantasy and science fiction digital artists. This is the old one, How to Draw and Paint Anatomy, which I reviewed in my previous video regarding great books to study from if you're learning to draw anatomy. It says volume 1 on it. I don't think this one is called volume 2, but it is a newer version of the old one. So still old. You're going to have to look around for this. How to Draw and Paint Anatomy, Improve Your Figure Drawing, 76 pages of workshop. Terrific fantasy artists in here showing how they would utilize figure drawing. Got John Howe and Donato Giancola, Lucas Graciano. I mean, at one after another in terms of the pros in here. And this one has a whole section by Ron Lemon, which I think is probably one of the best artist teachers that you can come across. So just this one section that's done by Ron Lemon is worth the price of this book, which it's more of a magazine than a book, so it's probably going to cost you around $20 because it's published in the UK and it's older and it might be a little bit harder to find. But if you can find this, you will not be disappointed. So yeah, there's the whole giant section. There's 5 sections here on Ron Lemon, who I believe was a student at Watts Atelier, which is another place I've talked about many times in my videos that is the go-to for learning how to be a professional artist, illustrator, and specializing in the figure. All right, this next book, Anatomy for Artists, A Visual Guide to the Human Form. This is by 3D Total Publishing, and I've done an entire video on this one, so I will not spend a ton of time on this. I just want to make sure that it is included in this video where I'm recommending books, and there will be a link to it below. If you want to watch one specifically about this, there is that other video on my channel where I talk about anatomy for the artist and do a book review. This is a great book, and the main thing, I guess, without belaboring the information, is that it uses photography along with breakdowns of the figure. So you can see that there is a photo, and then there is the musculature. There's these overlays where you've kind of stylized it here, and they're showing the planes of the figure over here. I mean, that right there is, I think, what makes this particular book stand out to me. And there's lots of different dynamic poses. There's male and female models with different body types. Super good. Super good. Definitely something that should be added to anyone's library. All right, we're going to back off a little bit off of the figure. And this is kind of maybe I would throw this in first. So the Dynamic Bible, Volume 1 by Peter Hahn. This is terrific. This to me would be a great thing to start with. And the copyright on this is 2020. If Peter Hahn is out there listening, please make Volume 2 and Volume 3 and let us know, because I will definitely be purchasing those books. So this kind of is laid out sort of like the old book that was one of my top recommendations, and that's Drawing Comics the Marvel Way, where he breaks down the materials, he breaks down things like posture, And this is not something that you're going to find in many places. I've actually started doing this a little bit with my daughter, who's in junior high now. And I said, if you want to practice getting better at drawing, one of the things you need to do is start to control the material, whether it's a pen or a pencil, and be able to control your hand and be able to develop the way that you work so that you can do all of these really cool things. You can't just go from, starting out to drawing this wonderful thing. I mean, just line variation, exercises in controlling things. There's a lot of perspective in here, ellipses and circles. And I think it's practical perspective. I really like the way that he presents perspective, because it's not the dry, here's 1 point perspective, let's draw a building, all of the lines are perfect, and take that information and apply it right away. He goes through these geometric forms, these organic forms, and then you've got boxes and space, which is a really excellent exercise. He talks about some ways to create value in a drawing. So we've got rendering, and then he gets into different types of surfaces and textures and how you can imply those things. We've got it moves right into a study of bugs, right? So you've got, putting these basic shapes together and connecting them, and then creating that volume and adding that detail. And again, it just sort of makes it really fun and interesting, and not just, let's just draw a box for the sake of drawing a box, or an ellipse for the sake of drawing an ellipse in perspective. You're almost concepting here, where you're creating, and then he gets into automobiles. Really awesome book. Now this one, not so much about anatomy, but really awesome when it comes to a starting place for learning how to draw well and learning how to control your drawings. Get better at anatomy. So it's issue or volume 212. And this one has a section in here. I mean, ImagineFx puts out a great publication anyway to begin with. I guess what it comes down to is, once in a while, you find something that just goes, oh, the light bulb goes off. So 3 simple tips for proportions is an article in this issue by Charlie Picard. And these quick tips, I looked at them and I was like, oh, well, I never thought of that. I never thought of looking at it like that or measuring the figure like that. So just this one little section in here is one of those moments where you go, okay, I got that. And I actually need to look and see if this artist has a full-out book where I can get a collection of his stuff, because it really was just very functional. Okay, so where you can implement this stuff immediately. Loomis. So Loomis, figure drawing for all it's worth, classic. There are a lot of artists that will reference the techniques and processes and thoughts of Loomis, and kind of disseminate that information. So if we're talking about Bridgeman Anatomy Study Guide, this is actually a book that is by Jeff Watts from Watts Atelier, where he is taking the study of Bridgman and he is putting it together where there's actually QR codes to videos where he demonstrates how he has taken that information and through his own filter has applied it to the things that he's interested in. So this is really kind of cool, because one of his big inspirations is Frank Frazetta. So if Jeff Watts takes Frank Frazetta's style or a piece from Frank Frazetta, like this Jaguar God piece, and uses the tools and processes and techniques and sort of the thought process of Bridgman, you put all those things together and stir it up, and you have your own version of that artist. So then we all start being the best version of ourselves that we can be, but also we have connected with the people, the artists that have inspired us. It's kind of like an interesting thing. We become our own versions of our artistic heroes. And isn't that true for really anything? I mean, if you think about, if you were an athlete, you would you become sort of a culmination of all your favorite athletes, the heroes from that sport that you grew up watching. We emulate their stances, we emulate their movements, because that's sort of that's the top tier. So that's where we want to aspire to get. So of course we're going to try to copy those things, and there's definitely no shame in doing that to talk about there. So what I'm working on now, this is kind of like the end game for me, is what am I going to do with all this information? So I have a sketchbook that I picked up, and I just called it Anatomy. I called it Anatomy and Portrait. And when I'm teaching when I was teaching drawing to high school students, this is sort of like my sketchbook, my notebook. And I was working through things like the Michael Hampton book, and I was doing these drawings page by page. And some of these are just straight copies of the pages that I saw in that book, which again, that's the way to really internalize the information, is to not just read it and look at the pictures and put the book on a shelf. It's to do these exercises and activities and try to actually take that journey. You want to go down the same path that the artist went down. So there's a lot of notes here. Again, a lot of the drawings are just me copying what I've seen. But what I started to do here is take different artists from the books that I've just referred to in the video. I've taken different artist techniques in something like breaking down the human head. I've come up with my own way to do it. So maybe it's part Loomis, maybe it is part Riley, maybe it is part Hampton, maybe it is, but it's all of these things again mixed together with what I already know, and trying to put it forth in a way that I understand and I think works, right? And then what I would do is go through and draw some of these things in my sketchbook. So I would break down the process of the human eye and why it looks the way that it looks. And then I would go through and find some photos of eyes and noses and mouths, and I would put them all together. So what I did is I took a lot of my notes on these features and I put them together in a handout in a PDF that I plan to create some kind of some courses, some lessons. So if that is something that you're interested in, that is coming soon. So I'm working through these books and all the books and things that I have learned before, and all the teachers that have taught me and got me to the place where I am. And my goal is then to take that information through my own filter and offer it to people who would aspire to learn how to do the same types of things that I know how to do. All right, so those are some of my new recommendations, along with a idea that I have for a course that I think that I would like to offer to people, some PDFs, some lessons, some video lessons. If that is something that you think you might be interested in, please feel free to drop a comment. I'm kind of taking a note as to the interest, because if I was to spend 40 hours creating these lessons and videos and handouts and PDFs, and they only really helped one person. I mean, while that would be cool to help one person, it definitely would not be the best use of my time, or the smartest in terms of microeconomics. But anyway, hopefully you found a book that you think you might like to pick up and you enjoyed the video. I appreciate, as always, you taking a look and watching it through. Hopefully you enjoyed it and you took some value from it. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching. There's a little button that they put on the laptop or something, and then they say click it, and then you can never even miss a video.
That's if you subscribe.